Lucario has helped fighting decks quite a bit. These decks benefit the most from quick setup and first turn damage out the gate, so increasing this damage potential is a major boost. Let's take a look at some of these powerful fighting decks. Hey guys, welcome back to our Pokemon TCG Pocket series. Today we're going to go over fighting decks from Space-time Smackdown. There are quite a few cards from this set that bring fun and variety. Before we start, if you can, please give us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate the support. Okay, let's get to it. Fighting decks have received a nice buff this patch with the introduction of Lucario, and its ability, Fighting Coach, which makes attacks used by your Pokemon do an additional 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. What's great about fighting decks are their low energy cost, quick setup, and aggressive playstyle. This counters the current stall meta pretty well. These decks are also relatively easy to play with, which makes them perfect for players just starting out or wanting to better understand the new game mechanics. All of these decks are geared towards aggressive starts. Your main focus will be doing damage fast and as much as possible. A few decks will also not be running any EX cards, which gives you more chances to use your whole bench. Our first deck has two variations, but the same goal. One will use the basic card Farfetch'd. The other will focus around Hitmonchan. The rest of the deck will be the same. For both decks, the key is to start doing damage with one of these cards. Farfetch'd has Leak Slap for 40, and Hitmonchan with a Jab for 30. You'll also want to use Sabrina early on, especially if your opponent has an EX card on their bench. Even though you'll most likely not beat their EX card and the opponent will probably retreat this card from their active next turn to save it, you're doing damage to this card. This will play a large role later, when you get the chance to use Cyrus to bring this card back to the active. The best time is with Marshadow's Revenge or when you have Lucario set up for the finishing blow. For this deck, we will run 2 Sabrina and 2 Cyrus cards. This strategy definitely throws off your opponent's typical way of playing. Let's watch it play out. Our next deck will also feature Lucario, as all of the decks in this video will. For this deck, we will run the Rampardos line. Rampardos Head Smash, doing 130 damage, is one of the strongest attacks in TCG Pocket for only 1 energy cost. This deck is slightly unconventional when compared to most decks. We'll only run 1 Hitmonchan with this deck, which puts our deck basic card count to just 3. This gives us a good chance at drawing the one we need at the start, and also removes the chance of drawing 2 Hitmonchans during the match. Also, because of this change, we will only use 1 Pokeball card. There's also not much of a need to run Dawn here, as the energy needs are all cheap. We will run 1 Pokemon Communication Trainer card to help build Rampardos pretty quickly. Let's watch it in play here. Let's take a moment to talk about a trainer card that we see making an impact soon. Mars. We know that it's not getting much play as of now, but we see it as a potential game changer in the very near future, once the meta is settled. Mars makes your opponent shuffle their hand into their deck and draw a card for each of their remaining points needed to win. This supporter could be a late Cyrus counter, or even stop cards that stall while building, like Magnezone. Just picture playing a Mars late game when both players have 2 takedowns and almost their complete hand is pulled. Throwing a Mars with an injured bench right before your last big play will, in most cases, ruin your opponent's plans to push one of your injured cards in next turn, potentially sealing your win for the close. As of now, this card will not make as much of an impact because decks are too inconsistent still, but we're getting close, so keep your eye on Mars. Now back to the fighting decks. Our third deck will feature one that came with the Mythical Island update, but with a twist of some newer cards, Aerodactyl EX. Remember that Aerodactyl has the powerful ability Primeval Law that causes your opponent to be unable to play any Pokemon from their hand to evolve their active Pokemon. This new deck version will now feature Lucario, along with the new tool cards, Giant Cape and Rocky Helmet. We'll also include Strong Trainer card Cyrus. If we had to pick one card that has been meta-defining for the Space-time Smackdown update, it would certainly be Cyrus. This card switches in one of your opponent's benched Pokemon that has damage on it to the active spot. Cyrus can ruin your opponent's plans and also make them fear it being played the entire match. For this deck, we'll run 1 Leaf and 1 X Speed. This frees up our play to be able to potentially use an X Speed and a Cyrus and/or Sabrina the same turn. It also allows us to move our active out early on in the event that we have a bad draw. Here's the deck in action. Here's our Space-time Smackdown Pokemon card spotlight. It's an underrated one that could potentially plug into various decks. Shaymin is an optimal bench supporter. The Fragrant Flower Garden ability allows you to heal 10 damage from each of your Pokemon once during your turn. You can run it with any energy deck and benefit each round from the heals, potentially pushing all of your cards out of range of the opponent's next attack. This has been a major plus of Space-time Smackdown. So many decks are expanding outside of their typical single energy needs, which will increase deck diversity over time. Keep it on the bench, away from the active, and don't overlook Shaymin. Our next Lucario fighting deck will feature Mankey and Primeape. We'll use the promo A Mankey along with the Primeape from Genetic Apex, but any Mankey will work with this deck. In most scenarios, you will take damage from Druddigon against stall decks anyway, so you can take full advantage of Primeape's move, Fight Back, which does 60 more attack if it has damage on it. With Lucario set up on the bench, this gives the potential for Primeape to put out 120 or even 140 damage by the time you're ready to put out your second energy. We'll run a Giovanni with this deck, in the event you are set up with 2 Lucario on the bench, which pushes you into the 150 range. This deck has some very high damage potential, and can get set up extremely fast. Just note that it's also a risky deck with Mankey's low HP. You can lose it before you have the chance to evolve. So this deck is a bit riskier, but still fast, fun, and strong. Let's see how it plays out. Gallade EX will be featured in our final deck. Its energized blade attack does 20 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. This fighting deck is basically built to beat the stall decks, especially the ones sitting behind Druddigon. The main play is to use Hitmonlee's Stretch Kick to attack their bench while building your Gallade EX on the bench. Then, once they're in range, push Gallade to the active, and use Cyrus to bring their injured card to the active. This deck really does well against the popular Darkrai decks that are everywhere now. After a day of testing this deck, we felt this was the best variation. Hitmonlee gives you the leg to reach out to the bench for the stall decks, and Farfetch'd helps against the more aggressive leads. You can use another Marshadow if you want here, for the 1 cape. We're also running 1 Sabrina in this deck. In a number of scenarios, we've needed to pull the bench in to avoid taking additional damage, and Cyrus doesn't always work out in early game. Let's watch it in play here. Of these Space-time Smackdown fighting decks, our favorite is the Rampardos. It's sneaky good and can often finish off your opponent before they see you setting up. Let us know if you like any of these decks, or if you've tried them in battle. We'd love to hear your opinion in the comments. Thank you again for joining us here at IDGT902 YouTube. We hope you find value in our videos. If you do, please subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Stay tuned here for more Pokemon TCG Pocket and Jurassic World Alive content soon. And have an awesome day, guys!